So get this. What if we could figure out how someone's really doing on the inside, not from the words they're saying, but from the sound of their voice itself? It sounds like science fiction, right? But a recent study dove right into this, using AI to try and estimate a person's quality of life, based only on how they speak. Now, to really get why this kind of technology is so important, we have to start with the problem it's trying to solve. And the whole reason this study even started was because of a serious, kind of hidden crisis in Japan's mental health care system. Take a look at this number, 285 days. That's the average amount of time a person in Japan spends in a psychiatric hospital. It's a really shocking number, and it points to a system that's under an incredible amount of strain, with patients facing these super long hospital stays. And that 285-day figure gets even more dramatic when you put it in context. Compare it to just over 42 days in the UK or about 14 days in Italy. The difference is just huge. And this isn't just some abstract statistic. It really highlights a massive challenge in helping people get back on their feet and back into their communities. You know, a huge piece of the puzzle in preventing these long stays and stopping people from having to be readmitted is tracking their quality of life. But here's the thing, it almost never gets done. Doctors and clinicians are often just stretched too thin, and they might not have the specific training. And that right there is the gap this new tech is trying to fill. So if the old ways of doing things are falling short, where do you even turn? Well, this study asks a really fascinating question. Can technology give us a new way forward? And could the answer be hiding in something as personal and unique as our own voice? Okay, first, let's just be really clear about what the AI is trying to listen for. It's called subjective quality of life. This isn't some external checklist a doctor fills out. It's about a person's own feeling about their life. You know, their energy levels, how they feel socially, what their symptoms are like. It's so vital because at the end of the day, the patient's own experience is what recovery is all about. And that leads us right to the big question at the heart of this research. Could the acoustic patterns in someone's speech, their own unique vocal fingerprint, actually be used to measure their subjective quality of life? The hope was to find a way that was simpler, faster, and frankly, a bit more objective to get this crucial information. So how in the world do you test a wild idea like that? Well, a team of researchers in Japan put together a really clever experiment to do exactly that. Their goal? To train an AI to become a kind of super listener. The setup itself was actually pretty slick. First, they had 18 patients with schizophrenia answer some standard quality of life questions, but they were talking to an automated agent. As they spoke, their voices were recorded. Then, that audio was put under a microscope, so to speak, to pull out that unique vocal fingerprint we talked about. And finally, an AI model was trained to see if it could connect that fingerprint to the patient's actual QOL scores. Now, to find the absolute best way to do this, the researchers didn't just use one AI model. Nope, they trained 10 different machine learning algorithms. You can kind of think of them as 10 AI detectives. They basically set up a competition to see which detective was the best at finding the hidden clues in the vocal data. And they tested these AI detectives in 2 different ways. The first was called cross-sectional. The question there was, can the AI figure out a patient's well-being by comparing them to everyone else in the group? The second way, and this is super important, was longitudinal. That asked, can the AI track changes in a single patient over time by comparing them to, well, themselves from an earlier recording? All right, so after all that training, all that competition between the AI detectives, what did the AI actually hear in these patients' voices? Let's get to the results. So, which of our AI detectives took home the prize? Well, for that cross-sectional test, an algorithm called K-nearest neighbors came out on top. It basically works by finding the most similar voices in the group. But for the longitudinal test, the one tracking individuals, a totally different model called random forest won. That one's a bit more complex. It uses a bunch of decision trees to make a more robust prediction. Okay, first up, the cross-sectional results, comparing one patient to the whole group. The AI was accurate for 10 out of the 18 patients, so about 56% of the time. I mean, that's a pretty interesting start for sure, but it also means it was wrong almost half the time. Not exactly a home run. But then, look what happened with the longitudinal test. When the AI was just comparing patients to their own past recordings, the accuracy shot way up to 83%. It correctly predicted the change in quality of life for 5 out of the 6 people they tracked. This was the mic drop moment of the whole study. Now, to their credit, the researchers were also really transparent about where the model still struggles. They pointed out that the AI had the hardest time with patients who were at the extremes, either doing really well or those who needed the most serious medical help. For example, one person was hospitalized shortly after the test, and their voice just didn't fit the pattern. So, what does all of this actually mean for the future of mental health care? I mean, yeah, these are early results, and it was a small study. But they point toward a potentially powerful new way of keeping an eye on someone's well-being. The main takeaway here is crystal clear. Your own voice is your best baseline. And that insight is a game changer. It opens the door for tech that could check in on a patient's quality of life continuously, without some big intrusive test. Just imagine an app on a phone that lets a doctor spot a negative turn early just from a quick voice check-in, allowing them to step in way sooner and maybe even prevent a person from having to go back to the hospital. Of course, this is just the beginning. This tech needs a lot more research with bigger, more diverse groups of people, but it leaves us with this really powerful question to think about. As we teach AI how to listen, not just to our words, but to the very fabric and quality of our voice, what incredible new things are we going to learn about ourselves?